So I want to introduce our first keynote speaker of the conference. We often begin our presentations with a summary of some of the climate crisis to set the context, and we'll also touch upon the collective action and the determination needed to hit kind of impossible dreams. Our speaker can provide almost unmatched perspective on both. So Robert Swan OBE set out in life with the early ambition of making it to both poles, and was told by many naysayers that would not be possible for him. He achieved his goal and then some. So he became the first person to walk to both poles, and in doing so, he witnessed the polar wilderness and some of the earliest signs of human impact on the climate. Robert is about to set off in the next couple of days. I think actually tomorrow he's going to Chile and then onward to the Antarctic on an expedition to finish his Herculean effort to cross the entire Antarctic landmass. So we think he's going to provide us with really useful perspective on what we need to do and why. And so please join me in welcoming Robert to the stage. Robert, over to you.
Wonderful. Well, hi, everybody. I hope you can all hear me. I loved a sentence from the film. It actually touched me. That everything was difficult before it was done. And I'm going to talk to you very quickly today about what's possible to achieve together. And what we're talking about really is turning dreams into a reality. And this began for me at the age of 11, the last time I had a decent haircut. And I read the stories of the real explorers who went to the North Pole and the South Pole, and I made a commitment that one day I would walk to the North and South Poles. And many years later, we, not me, achieved that mission. So where are we going first? Right to the bottom of the world, the Antarctic continent. It took me 7.5 years to raise $5 million to undertake this journey. 30 odd years ago, ladies and gentlemen, you could not fly to Antarctica. You had to go by ship, once south of New Zealand. I was thinking maybe we should have gone to the Bahamas as ice coats our ship and arrived on the shores of the only place in the world that all of us own. 5 of us would live in Antarctica for 1 year, and then 3 of us would make a journey to the South Geographic Pole. More people had stood on the moon than had walked to the pole. We were the first people to go to the South Pole on foot since Scott, Shackleton, and Amundsen nearly 100 years before us. And our system was really the best we could possibly do at that stage. We had no radio communications. We had no GPS to tell us where we were. We would navigate using the sun, a sextant, and this watch all the way to the South Geographic Pole. One building the size of a football pitch in the center of a continent twice the size of Australia. 80 days of food and fuel. The experts, which were mentioned by Dominic, the experts said, you will fail, you will die. We believed we could do it. But one thing we knew, we would get thin. I would lose on this journey 69 pounds in body weight as we go, because we could not pull quite as much food as we needed. 9 hours a day, 7 days a week, no backup, no machines, 350 pounds on each sledge. We would cross over 5,000 crevasses as we go to the pole, and we couldn't afford to take ropes and ladders and rescue equipment. So we had to do something which we must do to achieve this extraordinary journey that everybody's on who's listening. We have to trust each other. And trust is something I believe we're losing in this world. And in our business, if you don't trust each other, you go down a hole and you don't come back. Simple as that. Once past the crevasse zone, we've got 350 nautical miles to the pole now. We're standing in this photograph on 16,000 feet of solid ice. Beneath our feet is 90% of the entire world's ice, 70% of the entire world's fresh water. We're standing on it. And it is the most dangerous, lethal, but silent force on Earth. If we continue, I repeat, continue to melt this, we're going to swim. So all we're doing is to try and stop the unleashing of this incredibly dangerous force, which is called the Antarctic ice cap. 350 miles to go now. As we close in on the South Pole, remember, we don't have an iPhone 14 to ring up mummy. We don't know, we're just hoping this is happening, that our ship, which had dropped us off a year later before in Antarctica, is now returning. And on board that ship is a tiny aeroplane. That aeroplane will be put onto an iceberg, one chance to take off, fly to the South Pole to look for us. If they find us, we jump on the plane, go back to the base and do something, ladies and gentlemen, that we promised to do. As all of you know, we need help to make things happen. And I was so lucky to get the patronage and support of the great Jacques Cousteau from France. He gave me credibility. And you know something, giving people credibility is one of the best things you can do for other people. He helped me make this happen. But he said to me, Rob, at the end of your expedition, leave Antarctica clean and tidy, just your footsteps in the snow. Clear your rubbish, clear your garbage, leave nothing in the true last great wilderness left on Earth. So I said, done. And we made that commitment to him. Last few miles to the South Pole lives in my nightmares. Because what happens if we'd made one mistake in our calculations? We could have missed the pole by 80 miles, arrived there, 2 days left of food. Which way do you go? You're dead. But I was with two fantastic navigators. They navigated us by sun, sextant and watch, Roger and Gareth, 300 yards off course. There was the South Geographic Pole. For those people interested in figures, the average yearly temperature at the South Pole is minus 56 Celsius. This was a nice warm day at minus 42. We had done it, and we were so proud of what we'd done. We celebrated our success. We had 5 minutes. The base commander came out from the South Pole, looked at me and said, "You must be Mr. Swan." I said, "Last time I checked, I am." He said, "I've got bad news. Your ship, Southern Quest, sank 5 minutes ago." Frankly, just the sort of bloody thing you want to hear when you've walked 900 miles, spoken to no one for a year, and the first news you hear is that you've lost your ship. Slightly upsetting. Most important thing for all of us is safety. But everybody's safe, but I've got a few problems. I've made a commitment, we had made a commitment to Jacques Cousteau that we would take away all of our equipment and rubbish. I don't have a ship. It's 5,000 kilometers back to New Zealand, and not even I can persuade people to swim back carrying the 60 tons of equipment. And I think in life, if you make a commitment, you should deliver on it. That's good leadership. This was a huge battle. People had to spend another year in Antarctica. No one's ever paid. Eventually, and I went bankrupt in the process of this, I think the first time out of 5 so far, we got another ship in, cleared out the team, cleared out all the rubbish, and did what we said we were going to do. I think that's good leadership. Something happened to me walking to the South Pole that brought me here to speak to you. My eyes changed color in 70 days through damage. Our faces blistered out, the skin came away, and we didn't know why. When we got home, we were told by NASA, wait for it, Yes, we walked under the hole in the ozone layer the month it was discovered. I came back home with blisters in my eyes, which hurt, face all falling off, and tried to tell people about this issue. And people wouldn't listen. And it was rather depressing. However, in a world so often full of bad news, people forget that actually the world got together, signed the Montreal Protocol, stopping the use of CFC gases that cause this problem. And guess what? The hole in the ozone is now healing itself. So anybody thinks that we can't do things, we can if we have the collective will to do it. Fantastic. Don't laugh. I know you're all business women and businessmen, but I had a debt of $1.2 million. I'd never had a job. So I thought, great, let's go to the North Pole, achieve the dream of reaching both poles on foot and pay off the debts. Well, the last bit didn't work. We doubled the debt, but honestly, who cared? Off we go. This time, 8 of us, 7 different nations, will walk 700 miles across a frozen ocean. So every step you take is away from the safety of land. Very hard physical work, the North Pole. Appalling surfaces. This would be our home for 56 nights in a row, and we had to learn something that I'm sure all of you are very good at. I'm not. And we had to learn patience with each other. On the right-hand side there, you can see Darryl, who would become the first American to walk to the North Pole, and you can see how much he truly enjoyed Rupert's musical skill. Not much, but I think listening under difficult circumstances, having patience with each other is very, very important teamwork. Here's me coming in washing naked at minus 74 degrees Celsius, quite cold. And any gentleman watching the slideshow will see clearly that there is absolutely nothing hanging down in the central area of the photograph for obvious, very cold reasons. We are now 642 miles away from land, in the middle of a frozen ocean without radio communications. And we're so near the pole. And in 3 days, the nightmare begins. The ice beneath our feet begins to split, and then the entire ocean melts beneath our feet. This is 30 years before words like climate change, global warming, ESG, carbon footprint. So we weren't looking at this, ladies and gentlemen, going, oh, well, this is climate change. We were looking at it thinking we are dead. And in 20 hours of trying to go north through this, we're still going back south. And in order to stay alive, we have to cheat time. Because at the North Pole in summer, it's always daylight. So you can throw away your watch and run 40-hour days. Now the team is put through hell. We have to do 40-hour days, 1 hour sleep a day, if you're lucky, for a week to push through this ice and reach the pole. And as we go, people start to become badly injured. Darryl, our brave American, he lost his heel off his foot, only 115 kilometers out from the pole. We have to keep going. We can't call for rescue. And thank goodness, we had a bit of luck. Last few miles to the pole, the ice came together. We set off this rather ancient beacon, and eventually a plane was able to get in to pull us out. We had done this. Yeah, I became the first person in history stupid enough to walk to both poles, but we'd done it, and we flew a flag which I still think has relevance for us all. Fantastic moment, and it was great for me because I said, this is it. I will never walk anywhere in cold weather again. Well, let's see what happened next. Went back home, was called in immediately by Jacques Cousteau. And Jacques Cousteau didn't say, well done, Robert, for walking to both poles, removing all of your garbage from the Antarctic. He looked at me and he said, what are you doing for the next 50 years? And I said, well, can I have a cup of tea while you tell me? And 31 years ago, he gave us a mission. In the year 2041, 19 years from now, the agreements, the treaties that preserve Antarctica for us all, it is the only place in the world that we all own. No one owns it except us. And in 2041, we could be stupid enough to leave that one chance and let it go. And I have been working now for 31 years to make sure that we have the sense to leave this continent, which we all own, as a natural reserve land for science and peace. The game is on. How? And that's what's brought me to speak to you all today. If we are using more clean, renewable energy in the real world, flying the planet using hydrogen, no one is going to go to the Antarctic to exploit it for fossil fuels because it won't make financial sense to do it. So I've tried, not very successfully, but I've tried really, really hard to promote renewable energy to scale as best I can. We have sailed 225,000 nautical miles around the world, showing, especially young people, how renewable energy can power our yacht. What I love about all that you're doing is that you can't inspire people by telling them, you inspire people by showing them. And we even have solar panel sails on our yacht and they work. Our engine is powered by renewable energy. At some stage, definitely going to have an hydrogen engine in our yacht. But we use different types of biofuels, alternative fuels to power the yacht. And every year, ladies and gentlemen, we go to Antarctica to make champions of people, to make sure we have the sense to leave Antarctica alone. Very, very global. I'm proud of this. I've taken 85 fantastic women from the Middle East who come down and go back home and really push the idea of clean, renewable energy. Hundreds of people have come with us from the great country of India, such an important place, 1.4 billion people. We have to work with them not to make the same mistakes we continue to make often in our lives here. Obviously, huge amounts of effort are done with China, because India and China, let's be honest, they're going to be the empires on Earth, and hopefully they will help preserve Antarctica and make what you're doing happen too. And what we see in Antarctica is actually terrifying. I go there every year and I see the change every year for 35 years, and I see it. And remember, an iceberg that comes off Antarctica, it's just unbelievable scale I'm talking about here, what I see. I mean, these colored areas here, that one at the bottom is the size of France. The top one's the size of Texas. These are huge areas of ice that are coming off the Antarctic. And as we all know, an ice shelf that's floating on the ocean, if it melts, doesn't raise sea level. It's like a piece of ice in a gin and tonic. But once that ice shelf is gone, it releases ice from the main Antarctic mainland, and that's ice that will contribute badly and seriously to sea level rise. And this is not a real photograph, obviously, but this is why the Titanic came off second. You know, you only see an eighth of an iceberg. Then it may not matter to us now in the West, but it matters to people already. Sea level rise. I know this family in the Maldives. They had to move house. They did nothing in their lives ever to deserve having to move house to nowhere. enter my son, who is really annoying. His name is Barney, and Barney is everything I should be, actually. And Barney said to me something very interesting. He said, Dad, our generation is really upset with your generation, my generation, because you know what the problems are and not enough is actually happening. Present company, by the way, I'm speaking to this today, a present company accepted. And he said, young people are angry, frustrated, annoyed. They're also, you know, they get a lot of attention by being angry and annoyed. They get more likes on their Facebook and Instagram. But if there's one thing you've taught me, Dad, this is Barney speaking, is that anger gets you nowhere. And we don't have time, as the video said, we don't have time to be angry for the next 10 years. We've got to turn that anger that young people have into solutions. So Barney said, look, Dad, I'm going to form the Climate Force Challenge, and I'm going to try as a young person to give simple, easy solutions so young people can get behind them. And I said, this is sounding fantastic, Barney. You do that, I'll help preserve Antarctica. He said, well, Dad, there's only one catch. Will you walk to the South Pole with me? And I said, no, absolutely no. I've done all that. And he said, but you will have crossed the whole of Antarctica on foot. And I said, no, that doesn't interest me. And then he threw out an ace card and he said, look, Dad, how about making this journey the first ever renewable energy expedition to any pole? I said, I'm in, because remember, more clean renewable energy, no one's going to go and exploit Antarctica. I have survived, ladies and gentlemen, as the aviation industry has, entirely off the most incredible stuff. It's called jet fuel. I use it because it's perfect. It doesn't freeze, it doesn't weigh very much, and it's absolutely fantastic. It warms the tent, because if you don't melt ice and snow at the South Pole at -40 and 10,000 feet above sea level, you're dead in 5 days, not from cold, but from dehydration. So I think for all of us, you know, we've got to get that message across to people that if you do the same, you get the same. But change, and I'm sure Val would agree with me, that often change it's hard to make. And sometimes you've got to show sacrifice. So we had to ditch jet fuel, which is our perfect stuff. I'd survived on it for thousands of miles in cold temperatures. Ditch that for solar. And working with NASA, we produce these ice melters that one day they'll use on Mars. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen, they won't send astronauts to Mars. It's a waste of money. They'll send people like me to Mars, because people who go to Mars, A, won't come back, the first people, and secondly, they'll have to survive using technology like this to melt the ice that we know is on Mars to actually have water. So off we went to the South Pole, these special containers, incredible technology from NASA, that they fill them up with ice and snow, bang on the lid, and 6 hours later, you've got hot water. So off we went to the pole. And before we went, we were supported with a Mirai, unbelievable hydrogen car in California, where we live. And this was great. And we formed a nice cooperation with Toyota and with Shell, who would give us our backup fuel. Because I might be a bit crazy, but I'm not insane. That often the sun doesn't shine for a few days in Antarctica. So our backup was actually biofuel made from garbage and rubbish off the streets of Bangalore in India by Shell. So off we went to the pole, 600 nautical miles to go. It was great to be with my son. You know, generations have to join together, ladies and gentlemen. We can't have this. In a survival situation, you don't survive by this. You work by cooperation, collaboration, and we have to work across the generations. And this was great. for 3 days. And after 3 days, my left hip started to disintegrate as I was walking. And I don't mind a bit of pain, but I couldn't sleep. And if you can't sleep, you get slow. And I started to go behind, and this was all my nightmares came true. And after 300 nautical miles out of 600 nautical miles, I failed. And I have failed, ladies and gentlemen, in everything I've ever done in life, everything. But I'd always got to the South or North Pole if I said I was going to do it. And this was terrible, to have to go back to base camp, to leave my son at 23 years of age with 2 companions to carry on. I felt I'd failed, I'd let down my sponsors, and this was possibly one of the worst moments of my life. Barney said, "Don't worry, Dad, I've got this." And he would continue to the pole without his father, 2 companions, lost his toe, but he was willing to suck that bit up, and he reached the pole. And I think what's very important, for all of us is that as soon as we possibly can, we need to pass the baton and inspire and engage young people. And this was a great moment. A PR expert would have said this was perfect. Old warrior falls to bits, handsome son reaches the South Pole. And it was just a very, very special moment to hand that moment over to Barney, nothing to do with me. And Barney's taking it on. It's so important that we have inspiring stories from young people. And Barney has gone to far north Queensland in Australia, and he's replanting an area of rainforest when there was rainforest growing in this photograph, when there were trees and rainforest in the Antarctic. So it's been there a while. He's replanting it. A fantastic young people's team has got together, and those trees in this picture will grow to 2,000 years old. And all that we do, every expedition, everything we do, we clean it up. I don't like the word offset. We clean it up by planting trees with Barney to make sure all that we do is clean, and actually we're taking more out than we're putting in, just like all of you. There's me practicing being an Australian and failing dismally, and Barney is doing this whole thing organically. It's absolutely incredible. I'm really proud of him. I had a new hip put back in because I was not going to look at a map of Antarctica with 300 miles to go. So I went back to the exact spot where I'd failed with Barney, led by 2 fantastic women, Johanna and Katinka, the top polar explorers in the world, and off we went. I love to test technology, and my dark glasses were made of CO2 put into the atmosphere. We had jet fuel made from CO2 put into the atmosphere. I just wish, and I hope one day, that I'll be able to power our survival in Antarctica from hydrogen. So off we went. This was fantastic. My new hip was working perfectly, ladies and gentlemen. And I was doing, if you like, what I said we were going to do. And what we noticed, even at the South Pole, because of climate change, even at those very cold temperatures, if you get a spell of warmer weather, you get these ice crystals in the surface, and you're walking along, and suddenly the surface goes wham, which you think, I've fallen down a crevasse, I'm dead. And that happens so many times. Your skis go in, your sledge goes in, and the effort to get it out is, even at the pole, we experience the effects of climate change. And we got 97 miles out from the pole. If I made it to the pole, the job would have been done. I would have crossed the whole of the Antarctic landmass on foot, and I took my focus off. I started thinking about going home, having a pizza, having a bath. And I got out of the tent, fell over a piece of ice, I'm not joking, that big, and my brand new hip who'd done so well, blew out of its socket. It was quite a painful moment, and I'd failed again. Twice failing to do what I was supposed to be the best in the world at doing. Went to the pole on the shortest flight ever and felt just so bad. Dealing with failure is not the easiest thing, but I thought, right, if you do what you've got to do what you say you're going to do, Rob. So I had a new hit put back in, and I'm very proud to say that tomorrow my son and I head to Chile, and we're going back to finish those last 97 nautical miles to the South Pole, testing out new technology with fuel, solar, all kinds of fun things. And our expedition, I hope you don't mind, we're calling it Undaunted, because I feel that we are undaunted. And I think that for all of us, you know, it's just a question of us saying to ourselves, to make this dream a reality of hydrogen. You know, I am possibly the most frequent flyer you'll ever meet. I'm Global Services, thank you very much, United. I'm Emerald with American Airlines. You know, I feel so bad. I try and plant trees to make a difference, but you know what you're doing is absolutely critical. I don't need to tell you all why. The film told you, Val told you, but I think it's all down to our action. And I am terrified to go back to the Antarctic. I'm 66 years of age and I shouldn't be doing this, but I feel it's the best thing I can possibly do, to do what I said we were going to do, complete the journey with my son, hopefully be inspirational to people. And I'm there to support everything that you're doing, because I hope one day I can fly without feeling so bloody awful about doing it. 19 years to go until we preserve Antarctica. And I do believe this, that it's not somebody else's problem, it's ours. So good luck to you all at this fantastic conference. Val, the team, ZeroAvia, everybody, just thank you. And I'm so pleased that I managed to get this in before we go to the Antarctic. And if you want to follow our journey when you're having a nice Christmas dinner, nice and warm, think of Barney and I freezing in a tent at -40, doing our best to do what we said we were going to do. So check out our little website. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was absolutely fantastic. I think in the interest of time, we're going to move swiftly on to our next panel, but good luck with the next stage. Really hope we'll be hearing positive stories of the completion of the Undaunted task. Absolutely brilliant and great context for us all to mull over as we think about how we progress hydrogen aviation.